So you just booted up Tiny Tinas Wonderlands. The first thing you need to do is build your character. Picking a primary class can be a significant choice. You have to weigh up play styles, abilities, skills, and attributes. Not only that, you have to consider a bit later on in the game how a secondary class will complement your primary. So in this spoiler-free video, I'll give each class a brief overview, then describe the ways you can build that class based on their action skills, skill tree, attributes, and items. Then I'll run through all the potential class combinations and how the combos work together. In Wonderlands, there are 6 classes: the Spore Warden, Spellshot, Graveborn, Stabbomancer, Brrzerker, and the Clawbringer. Each brings with it one unique, always-on class feat. For example, the Stabbomancer gets a flat 30% crit chance, and the Spore Warden gets a mushroom pet. Each class has access to 2 action skills. You can only have one equipped at a time. Then there's a class skill tree for you to invest into. A short while into the campaign, you'll be able to select a secondary class. So in the case of the Stabbomancer and the Spore Warden, you'll now have both a mushroom and a 30% crit chance increase. You'll also have one ability out of 4 equipped at a time and have 2 skill trees to invest into. You'll also have attributes to raise, but if you want to know more about these, damage types and status effects, check out the video below. So let's run through all the classes. Be sure to check the timestamps below if you want to skip to a specific one. And don't forget, at the end of the video, I'll be running through combinations. Let's begin with the Spore Warden. The Spore Warden brings with it a Mushroom Companion as its class feat, which can taunt enemies and deal poison damage. Great for solo play and synergistic with other players. The Spore Warden specializes in action skill damage and cooldown rate increases, buff to companions, and finally, gun damage, handling, crits, and effects when critting. The Spore Warden's action skills are Barrage and Blizzard. Barrage fires off 7 arrows that deal ability damage and scales with your gun damage. It has 2 charges, letting you fire off your ability more often if that's the build you're focusing on. Blizzard deals high damage over time in a massive area, but doesn't have the same scaling factor. In terms of skills, there are a few ways you can build your character. The first is a direct focus on weapon damage, picking up skills like Eagle Eye, which flat raises your gun damage by 20% and handling by 25%. You want to pick up every skill that affects your guns, including Headhunter, which rewards good aim by giving you a 25% increased damage to critical areas, which is mostly enemies' heads. Finally, you want to grab the capstone, Play the Angles, for absolute carnage. With this build, you should be dumping your attribute points into Strength and Dexterity to increase your crit damage and chance respectively. You want to be critting in order to proc Play the Angles as much as possible, as that will ricochet your bullets up to twice, dealing damage based on your gun critical damage. The second way you can build your Spore Warden is focusing on action skills and or companions. This focus is a great complement to the Graveborn or Clawbringer, as they both bring with them their own pets. Or in the case of action skills, any other class you want to build around a particular action skill. Simply pick up the Spore Warden as a secondary and dump a few points into the Bounty of the Hunt, which gives you a 20% increase to cooldown rate for 5 points and no skill tree investment, or the Kindred Heart, which gives all your companions 45% extra health and 40% extra damage for 5 points and no skill tree investment. For extra points, you can get ability damage with Affinity, or a way for your mushroom to taunt enemies with Spore Cloud. Spore Wardens appreciate a fast-firing or accurate gun more than most in order to take advantage of their skills. Look for loot that increases weapon and ability damage, or text that provides boons for activating abilities. Companion-based Spore Wardens won't have issues finding gear that buffs their pets. You don't need elemental damage as a Spore Warden, so you can go for Black Powder brand weapons which naturally ricochet with crits, stacking with Play the Angles. Next is the Spellshot. The Spellshot's class feat is an always-on passive. When you cast a spell or reload a weapon, you get a stack of Spell Weaving. Each stack increases your spell damage, so naturally Spellshots want to focus around spells and guns, and that's exactly what their skill tree focuses on. One of their class action abilities simply lets them equip a second spell, letting them cast more powerful spells more often. The Spellshot's action skills are Polymorph and Ambidextrous. Polymorph lets you turn any non-boss enemy into a harmless skeep that floats around and doesn't attack for a long duration. If you or your allies deal gun damage to the skeep, they have a chance to cast their equipped spell for free. Yes, that means multiple meteors if you have the Calamity spell equipped. The next ability is Ambihextrous, and as mentioned before, lets you equip 2 spells. The second you cast by hitting the button normally reserved for your action skill. Keep in mind, higher level spells provide bonuses like extra gun damage after casting a spell, so you could have 2 going at once. There really is only 2 ways to build your Spellshot, and that's either as a primary or a secondary class. As a primary, you want to focus on spells and guns. You always want Spell Sniper, which gives you a flat 60% chance to crit with spells. Yes, it's massive. Glass Cannon is powerful as it makes your spells 30% more powerful, but the downside is harsh without good gear and a secondary class to boost your survivability, even with Mage Armor. You'll think you want a gun with a small magazine so you can be reloading often, and there is plenty with a single shot. This will drastically boost your output, but once you get Warcaster, having a large magazine might be the way to go, as you'll be instantly reloading and boosting up your spell weaving stacks simultaneously just by killing enemies. Finally, the capstone, Sever the Thread, gives you a 1 in 5 chance to instantly reset all spell cooldowns when you crit with your gun. So for this build, you want to max out your intelligence for spell cooldown and your dexterity for an increased crit chance. You'll be casting and firing incredibly frequently and getting tons of bonus damage for doing so. The secondary way you can build is as a secondary class. With only a 5-point investment into the class, you can boost your spell critical by 60%. For a little more, you can reduce your spell cooldown rate by 20% and your action skill cooldown rate by 15%, or you can, every time you get a spell weaving stack, which is reloading or casting, restore 10% of your ward. Warcaster is also a powerful ability for any class looking to fire a lot of weapons. In terms of items the Spellshot wants to look for, a powerful low clip size weapon until they get access to Warcaster. More than any other class, they're on the lookout for powerful spells. Powerful doesn't mean simply high damage. The Spellshot benefits a lot from low cooldown spells or one with a lot of charges, as casting more often benefits them. 2 Ice Spike spells, for example, will have you almost always casting. The next class is the Graveborn, and it comes with a Demi-Lich companion that deals damage to enemies, and after you cast a spell, it fires a blast of that damage type as well. The Graveborn skill tree focuses on the new dark magic damage type, which status effect heals you for the damage it deals. They also focus on kill skills, gaining boons as they kill enemies. They also focus on health and dealing more damage the lower it is. The Graveborn's action skills are Dire Sacrifice and Reaper of Bones. Dire Sacrifice takes 40% of the Graveborn's current health to deal 150% back at enemies as dark magic in an explosion around you. This scales with health and any boosts you make to it. Reaper of Bones fully heals you when you activate it, but your health drains quickly. As it's draining, you have an increased dark magic health leech as well as bonus dark magic damage. If you would die, you instead are made invulnerable for a short duration and you recover health. The ability then ends. There are multiple skill tree focuses you can have with the Graveborn. First is a focus on dark magic damage, in which case you'll need a dark magic spell and weapons. You want to pump points into Mortal Vessel, Dark Pack and Stain of the Soul. Then you need to make a choice. Do you go all the way to the capstone or pick up a secondary like Spellshot or Spore Warden to focus your build more on spells, or in the case of Spore Warden, guns. What you choose will determine how you invest your attributes, as Strength and Agility is better for a Reaper of Bones plus Spore Warden build, but Intelligence is better for a Dark Magic Ambihextrous build. Another way you can build your Graveborn is to focus on pets, picking up the Clawbringer or Spore Warden to complement. You want to put points into Faithful Thralls to increase your damage for every companion you have, which can get more with the Dark Hydra, which summons multiple Hydras when you kill enemies, further increasing your damage. You can then get Dread Covenant and Punishment to buff your Lich. Finally, you can focus on survivability by picking up Mortal Vessel, Sanguine Sacrifice, Dread Covenant, Ascension, and the capstone, Morheim's Blessing, in order to activate those regenerating kill skills when you cast a spell. Then you want a secondary into Brrzerker for the increased health focus. With Dire Sacrifice, you'll be dealing out the damage as it scales with your health. You want to invest into Constitution for health and ward, as well as Attunement for skill cooldown so you can cast Dire Sacrifice more often. In terms of the items the Graveborn wants, it's dark magic based. They also want anything that buffs health or companion damage. It's not so straightforward and depends on your build. The next class is the Stabbomancer, and its always on class feat is a flat 30% increase to critical hit chance. This means melee, guns, abilities, spells, and anything that can crit. In terms of the skills, the Stabbomancer is all about movement, critical status effects, and melee damage. The Stabbomancer's action skills are Ghost Blade and From the Shadows. Ghost Blade summons a spinning blade where you point. It does melee damage periodically to enemies around it based on your equipped melee weapon. Pressing the action skill again will reposition it for a cost to its duration, which is quite long. From the Shadows makes you enter stealth mode, where enemies can not see you for a short duration. When stealthed, all your damage will automatically crit, even spells and melee. However, crit damage will be slightly reduced. In terms of focus, you can already see two based on the Stabbomancer's action skills, melee and crit damage. Another build focuses on status effects, and others use the Stabbomancer as a secondary class. With a melee focus, you want to pick up skills like Follow Up, Nimble Fingers, and Shadow Step. Then you want to decide if you should invest all the way to the Capstone, which hits targets with melee damage at range when you crit with your guns or spells. Very powerful, but needs a large investment. Alternatively, you can pick up Brrzerker or Clawbringer and then start investing into their melee skills. Both of these classes having powerful melee-based action skills as well that takes advantage of your focus. Attribute-wise, you can pick up Strength for the crit damage, Attunement for the ability cooldown rate, and Agility for further crit chance increases. Though with Shadow Step, you'll be getting guaranteed critical hits for your melee. The next build focuses around critical damage and chance. You want to invest primarily into Strength for crit damage with this build. Getting Arsenal, Shadow Step, Elusive, Sneak Attack, and 1000 Cuts, which can stack your damage to insane levels, and finally the Capstone, Executioner's Blade, which adds extra melee damage on targets when you crit. This focus goes well with the Spore Warden for an extra crit focus. Alternatively, you can dump points into Wisdom and opt for a status effect and elemental build. Put points into potent poisons and then exploit their weakness, Contagion, Shadow Step, and then Alchemical Agent. You'll be guaranteed to melee crit, and when you do, you'll be spreading status effects to enemies. At this point, you want to pick up a secondary like Clawbringer for the elemental damage focus. Clawbringer can secondary focus on melee with this build as well. Brrzerker, like Clawbringer, can secondary focus on melee, but also help you heavily with frost damage, as frozen enemies take 3 times normal damage from melee attacks. This could be the synergy you shoot for. Another option is Graveborn for the dark magic focus and leech status effect. Stabbomancer wants powerful, hard-hitting melee weapons. Speed isn't as important as you want those big hits based on your abilities. You want anything that increases crit damage as well, and status effects if you've gone down that path. There are a lot of guns that increase melee effectiveness like crossbows, which make you deal more damage the more bolts are in a target, so keep an eye out for those. Next class is the Brrzerker, and its always on class feat makes it so whenever they activate an action skill, they're enraged and all damage dealt gets bonus frost damage for a long duration. Their skills focus on frost damage, melee, health, being enraged, and one powerful boost to action skills. The Brrzerker's action skills are Dreadwind and Feral Surge. Dreadwind spins you around and has very Diablo Whirlwind vibes. While spinning you move faster and deal melee damage around you. Increasing your ability damage also increases damage dealt. Feral Surge leaps you forward then slams you down, dealing frost ability damage all around where you land. It also instantly kills non-boss enemies if their total HP is below 20%. Its cooldown is reset if you kill an enemy with it, so you can chain multiple together. In terms of focus, you have 3 major options, the first being a focus on frost, the second on melee, and the third is as a secondary class. The frost focus will have you picking up Ancestral Frost, Cold Snap, Blast Chill, and the Capstone Blood of the Fallen if you're so inclined, which makes it so when you kill an enemy, a portion of your action skill cooldown is reduced. If it's currently active, it increases the duration. So, as you may have guessed, this build is all about buffing Feral Surge and using it as much as possible. Even without an attunement investment, you should almost always be Feral Surging, as kills while surging will refresh it, and kills while not surging will bring it up faster, 5 kills fully refreshing the cooldown. As the ability is frost based, all your bonuses will boost it up. Another build is primarily based on melee. Pick up Savagery, the Old Ways to increase your damage up close, Armored Defense, Blast Chill, Iron Squall, and the capstone, Blood of the Fallen. You'll be wanting to Dreadwind as often as possible, as your boost to melee will increase its effectiveness as well. With the capstone, you'll be either spinning for a crazy long time as kills increase the duration, or you'll be refreshing its cooldown by meleeing helpless enemies. You can opt to increase your survivability or frost damage along the way. Both the Stabbomancer and the Clawbringer helping supplement your build. You can opt for action skill cooldown rate with attunement, but I personally like strength and agility for more damage. Finally, the Brrzerker as a secondary. You can focus on survivability with Unyielding, Blood Frenzy, and Unarmored Defense, the latter working great with a Graveborn build that focuses around high health and sacrificing it for damage. You can also supplement other classes with powerful melee or frost buffs. Finally, if you love the action skill of another class, you can invest heavily into the Brrzerker to get the capstone, in which it makes it so their action skill lasts longer and be up more often. Once again, working very well with the Graveborn's Dire Sacrifice. Also works well with the Stabbomancer's Ghost Blade if you've gone a melee focus. If you plan on using melee, looking for a strong hard-hitting melee weapon is key, as Dreadwind hits with set intervals, making a large base damage superior to fast attack speed. If you're focused on frost spells and weapons will be core. In terms of stats you want to look for, anything that benefits melee, frost damage or action skills. The last class is the Clawbringer, and it brings with it a wyvern companion which flies around next to you, clawing at enemies and occasionally breathing fire on them. It can be heavily buffed with more attacks in the Clawbringer skill tree, which also focuses on bonus fire and lightning damage, as well as ward capacity. The Clawbringer's action skills are Cleansing, Flames, and Storm Dragon's Judgment. Cleansing Flame slams a hammer down and deals melee damage in a large area. It also deals fire ability damage, meaning it can scale in two ways. Storm Dragon's Judgment throws your hammer out like it does in the MCU, dealing lightning damage to all it passes through. It sticks to where it lands, dealing constant lightning damage while it's there. Then, when the duration is up or when you recall it, it comes back to your hand, dealing lightning damage again to those it touches. If you recall it early, it refunds a part of its cooldown. In terms of focuses, the Clawbringer has a few. You can focus on fire damage, lightning damage, or pets and tank, all of these able to be primary or secondary class focuses. The first is a fire focus. With this you want a decent fire-based gun or fire spell, and then pick up Oath of Fire, Dragon Aura, Blastamut's Favor, Fire Bolt, and if you're feeling like a capstone investment, Storm Smite. Storm Smite makes it so when you activate your action skill, you'll summon down elemental bolts to deal more damage. Ideally, you want to be shooting or burning things until you get close, then unleashing a Cleansing Flames to burn out everything around you. This can be complemented by the Stabbomancer and their status effect skills and always on 30% increased crit, or other classes who like a fire damage focus. How you could focus your attributes depends on how you like to play. This one can really do anything. Lightning is your next focus and it's more tied to melee. You want to pick up Oath of Thunder, Rebuke, Blastamut's Favor, Storm Breath, or Indomitable, and if you're feeling like it, the capstone Storm Smite. You might have guessed it, but you want to be using Storm Dragon's Judgment. You open by throwing your hammer in and firing off lightning spells or bullets until you get close, where you can unleash your melee damage. You may want to mix in more survivability with this build, as you'll be wanting to whack things up close, or have a secondary that focuses on melee. Once again, the attribute allocation is up to your play style. Both fire and lightning enjoy picking up skills to buff their pet. Finally, the Clawbringer makes a wonderful secondary, as a lot of their talents can buff damage types most classes can use, and their pets, which can be further buffed by the Graveborn or the Spore Warden. Their ward buffs can complement those who want a bit more survivability as well. The Clawbringer is the most up in the air class when it comes to what attributes and items you want. It's highly dependent on your build and your playstyle. They always appreciate lightning and fire weapons and spells, as well as good wards and items that buff elemental damage, action skills, and melee. So we've gone through all the classes, but let's talk about dual class combinations. The first being the Spore Warden and Graveborn. This combo seems like a match made in heaven, as both can heavily focus on companions as well as powerful dark magic damage guns. Faithful Thralls and Dark Hydra, making it so many companions increase your damage as well. It's also surprisingly tanky, between two pets taking damage for you and you having two abilities that help you when you're in Save Your Soul. Reaper of Bones makes it so your guns do insane magic damage over a long duration. Overall, a lot of synergy here. Then we have Spore Warden and the Brrzerker. The biggest synergy between these two classes is the Blizzard action skill. Running all the way down the Brrzerker path, picking up frost damage increases along the way, and ultimately getting Blood of the Fallen will make it so your Blizzard action skill will be super powerful and also last a lot longer, as it kills targets, or if it's on cooldown, refresh quicker as you kill. The Spore Warden having Bounty of the Hunt and Affinity to further boost it. Then we have the Spore Warden and Spellshot. The Spore Warden provides flat increases to gun damage, which benefits the Spellshot. The Spellshot can also reduce ability cooldown with Font of Mana. Overall, not an extremely synergistic combo at the time of this video's recording. Then we have Spore Warden and Stabbomancer. Not a lot of skills synergize between the Spore Warden and the Stabbomancer except one big one. The Spore Warden's capstone, Play the Angles. Your gun critical hits have a chance to ricochet. It just so happens that the Stabbomancer brings with it a 30% bonus crit chance and crit related skills. You can see where I'm going with this. It's the closest you're going to get to a sharpshooter class, focusing on powerful black powder pistols and snipers. Then we have the Spore Warden and Clawbringer, another heavy pet synergy, but instead of bringing dark magic bonuses, the Clawbringer brings the Spore Warden some fire and lightning. In particular, Clawbringer's fire build, which I mentioned before, works with the Spore Warden's gun focus, a great fire, gun and companion based class. Then we have Spellshot and Graveborn. This is the most obvious synergy, as the Lich pet will fire off its own damage every time you cast a spell, so together with Ambihextrous, you can unload a lot of damage. You can focus on spells and dark magic with this combo. The question will be, which would you primary, since there are so many synergistic skills between them both. Then we have Spellshot and Brrzerker. You can focus on frost-based damage and spells with this combo, putting only a few points into Brrzerker and the rest into Spellshot in order to throw out as much frost damage as possible. The Brrzerker also has ways of regenerating its health and ignoring ward, which makes the downside of Glass Cannon, which removes your ability to regenerate wards for a 30% spell damage increase, not so bad. Then we have the Spellshot and the Stabbomancer. This combo works well together, as the flat critical increase benefits Sever the Thread and your spells. With Sever the Thread, you can keep firing spells off indefinitely, and in doing so, max stacks your spell weaving. Also, you can focus on status effects with the Stabbomancer's potent poisons, exploit their weakness, and more. Then we have the Spellshot and Clawbringer. The Clawbringer can, like the Brrzerker, specialize the Spellshot into an elemental type, in this case either fire or lightning. Also, the Clawbringer has that focus on ward, offsetting the downside of Glass Cannon. Then we have Graveborn and Brrzerker. This is an excellent combo as mentioned before. The Brrzerker has many ways to boost your health regen, and one major way to boost your health pool. A large health pool means more health sacrificed with the Dire Sacrifice action skill, which means more total damage dealt. This is the ultimate tank alongside the Brrzerker and Clawbringer combo, but you'll also be dishing out the pain. Then we have Graveborn and Stabbomancer. The Graveborn focuses on dark magic and the Stabbo on spreading status effects. The dark magic status effect is Leech, so for a maximum dark magic damage build, this combo works well together. You'll be leeching health back like a madman, but also dishing out the pain at the same time. No investment in survivability will be necessary. Then we have the Graveborn and Clawbringer. Another good pet focus build, as both have skills that buff companions. Similar to Graveborn and the Spore Warden, Hydras are a good choice, while investing into the Wyvern and the Lich along the way. Kill skills and elemental damage don't really synergize together though, so only pick these two if you really like both the pets. Then we have Stabbomancer and Brrzerker. This class is an obvious choice for a melee focus, potentially one of the strongest, as you'll have frost damage to focus on, and frozen enemies take triple damage from melee strikes. With Stabbomancer's status effect increases, you could double down on this combo. There are multiple skill combinations with these classes, so you'll have to see which you prefer. Then we have Stabbomancer and Clawbringer, another melee choice, but in this case with a lightning focus. You'll have a lot of damage with the combination of your Wyvern's damage and Bow's lightning damage, and you could also take the Stabbomancer's status effect focus in order to spread your elemental damage types. You could also avoid the melee focus and focus primarily on fire damage and spreading the burning effect. Then we have Brrzerker and Clawbringer. You can focus on becoming the tankiest class around with this combo, with the Brrzerker's focus on increasing health and Clawbringer's on increasing wards. With a primary focus in Constitution and 2 different ways to cheat out the Save Your Soul mechanic, you'll be close to impossible to kill. A secondary focus on your action skills will ensure you keep regenerating health. There's also the obvious one, melee damage, as both classes have skills to increase their effectiveness. So that's everything you need to know about the classes in Tiny Tinas Wonderlands to get you started. I'll be back with more in-depth guides in the future, but for now, keep your eyes locked on Dantix for everything Wonderlands. Ciao friends.